podcast listeners. Thank you for joining us today for another episode. Today we have an exciting guest. Her name is Serena, and she also happens to be my daughter-in-law. But everything I say about her is actually true. I'm not stretching the truth. I'm not exaggerating. She is in her 20s and is one of the most amazing cooks and amazing hostesses that I have ever met. I actually learn a lot from her. So today she's going to share with us her favorite menu and a lot of her tips and some fun stories. So welcome, Serena.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this. I've been preparing like the nerd I am, making Google Docs and outlining it.
This is one of her strengths. She can be more prepared than anybody I know.
I do like to prepare, especially when it's something I'm passionate about. And as a stay-at-home mom, I am very passionate about hospitality, keeping my home clean, and just having an environment of welcoming just to my husband and guests as well.
I think that's actually a really great point, because a lot of times when people think about hospitality or having people into their home, they think outsiders, whether it's other family members or a church member or maybe even just somebody new that they've met. But hospitality is actually happening every day with our own families. If you can make a warm home for your husband and your children, what a wonderful place to be every day.
It is so fun, especially I think it's part of new marriage. We've been married a year and a half, and one of my favorite parts is having just, candles and a nice dinner, a glass of wine, and just making it seem like, we're going out. But doing it in the confines of our home, and
which actually
celebrating.
Going out very often. They have a new baby. Well, she's not new anymore. She's 6 months and is the cutest thing in the world. Again, no exaggeration here, just because I'm the grandma. But she is so sweet, so precious. But, early bedtime, things like that, you can still have just a warm, fun meal. And husband coming home from work, it can be something that you plan ahead of time and make a really special event happen even in your own home.
Absolutely.
But so tell us a little bit about your cooking journey. How you've been cooking for a while. To be able to have this much experience, I'm guessing you started when you were younger.
Yes, I started. My mom has pictures of me in the kitchen scrambling eggs and helping my dad cook. My mom definitely has been the primary, chef of our house growing up. But my dad is also very talented, and he is a big cooking inspiration. But funny story, my earliest not memory, but experience in the kitchen. This is, I hope I don't embarrass him or get in trouble telling this, but I was a youngster, less than one, I want to say, and he was cooking and it was carrying me and opened the oven, and I think either my foot got on the oven door or the pan, and I have a scar still on my foot from the burn, and it was very traumatic for him, and I'm guessing younger me. But
yeah, being a young dad, he probably was mortified.
Yes.
I did it all wrong. I thought I was doing good.
But that's my earliest experience in the kitchen. But I think it wasn't until I was around 13 that I really started cooking. Spaghetti, of course, being the first meal, being super easy. But I grew up in a family of 6, and just really kind of used that as my chore, I would say, to help out my mom and to help around the house. And now being married, I'm only cooking for 2, so things are looking a little bit different. But still, that passion has continued, and I kind of don't really have a big difference from when I was cooking for 6 versus 2, because my husband is 6'4" and over 200 pounds and eats like no one.
He eats like a family of 4.
Yes, he does. He eats like no one else I know.
Well, before she tells us her favorite menu, we do have one that she has served to guests many times. In fact, I had it last night in her home. I'm going to tell you a quick little story about her father-in-law, which is my husband. So there's a story similar to Sam's. So her dad, Sam, is holding the baby and burnt a foot. Well, when her husband, Serena's husband, my son, was younger, I went out grocery shopping, running errands, and Brian kept the kids at home, and he was being dad and real responsible, put him in the high chair and gave him a little coloring book and some markers. Was doing the dishes. And a few minutes later turned around and realized that Timothy had apparently bitten the tops off all the markers. And all of the tops of these markers were gone. He couldn't find them anywhere. And so he called the poison hotline. Unbeknownst to me while I was out shopping, that, he was just terrified that he'd poisoned the baby.
Oh my word.
And he called the poison hotline, and they calmed him down and told him that they were kid markers, probably Crayola, where they were the water non-toxic and all of that. But yes, Serena's husband, the 6'4", 200-pound guy, apparently was none the worse for biting the tips off the markers and swallowing them. Now he has better things to eat. We will hear about one of them. So, Serena, tell us one of your favorite menus for serving your family, but also when you have a large group of guests over.
So this menu, item has started. I've been making it for a while, and it actually came. My mom had a little box of recipes, and I believe the recipe came from you. Actually, it's from what is it called? Taste of Home, and it's a meatballs and with cream sauce and rice. And I have really gotten to the point where I never use the recipe. I've kind of probably tweaked it a little bit, which I'll share later, but it is my favorite to prepare with baked vegetables as a side, some Brussels sprouts, broccoli, or asparagus, and it's a really big comfort food. It's also really easy to make, especially if you do some prep work with it.
Okay, so I will post this recipe for y'all to find. Let's find out, what are your favorite shortcuts with this recipe, or how have you changed it to make it your own that you would recommend?
The first being the meatballs I'll talk about. I have, I've kind of learned recently that frozen chopped onions are my biggest life hack, kitchen hack. I hate chopping onions. It ruins my desire to be in the kitchen. It ruins my makeup if I'm wearing any.
That's true, because if you don't wear contacts, like I wear contacts, so I forget about it because it somehow protects your eyes. But if you don't, you just cry.
Oh, I just pour, and then even during dinner, it just stays in the atmosphere. So the recipe for the meatballs calls for chopped onions, and they're $1.50 or something.
In the frozen section?
In the frozen section.
Like
I get
with
Walmart.
vegetables?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I always keep a couple bags on hand and use those in the meatballs. And for the meatball recipe, I love to double or triple it. And so when I'm cooking it, this is all in preparation to freeze it and have pre-made for next time I want to make the recipe, or next time I have guests over, or even, next week.
Right. So you have frozen meatballs you can just pull out and instantly have a meal.
Yes. But my key for that is when I'm doubling or tripling it and cooking them, I use less time, because whenever you use them, you're going to reheat them, and I don't just want, dry,
sure,
just scorched meatballs. So I just do a little bit of less cook time, and that's all to preference. But pop them in the gallon freezer bag in the freezer, and just like last night, I didn't have anything ready, but when you arrived here, I just pulled it out, threw it on a baking sheet, and just 350 until it was warm to touch.
That's amazing, because it seemed like an instant meal, but work went in ahead of time for sure. But she was able to pull off dinner in just almost an instant.
Yes.
So do you use the same spices that the recipe lists, or do you change that up?
So for the meatballs, I need to pull up the recipe myself, okay. But they're not very seasoned. But I do like to add a little bit of seasoning, because I like flavor. The sauce does have some spices in it, but I do like adding some to the meatballs as well, which I think they just have parsley, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Yes, they just have parsley listed in the meatballs, salt and pepper. I like to add one of Trader Joe's best seasonings, in my opinion, the 21 season salute, which it's a mix of 21 seasonings. So, I mean, it just depends on how many meatballs I'm making, how much I use. So I'll add that in with the parsley, and also the sauce, I believe, calls for thyme, and I like to add to the meatballs a spice called herbes de Provence. I hope I'm saying that right, but it is. I know it is a mixture of thyme and rosemary. I'm sure there's something else in it, but although I add it to the sauce, I as well add it to the meatballs, and just makes them more flavorful. And also, I believe these meatballs can be versatile for if you were doing spaghetti and meatballs. When preparing them, you don't have to add the herbes de Provence if you're not going to be using all the meatballs for.
Yes, this recipe specifically calls for a cream sauce, but the actual meatballs are just meatballs. So you could add a tomato-based sauce instead of the cream sauce. But I do really like this because it gives you a little bit of something different.
Yeah.
You know, instead of just the spaghetti and meatballs type dinner, the cream sauce is really unique, and you can serve it with rice, which is what the recipe recommends. You could do noodles, but typically she served it with rice before.
Yes, and that sauce is to die for. It is
good. Drink the sauce. We have to restrain ourselves.
Yes, sometimes I do, but it is a very rich and can be a heavy meal. It's my favorite to serve it during the fall and winter months when it's a little cooler, but whenever I want it to be less heavy, less there's baby Joy. Less
She's saying, what? Skip cream? No way. Don't cut down on the richness.
Less thick, I will change up the consistency by adding more or less heavy whipping cream, and also using a different, variation of chicken broth or milk. And you understand, the more heavy whipped cream, thicker it's going to be. And sometimes I just cut that out completely and just do milk and chicken broth for a really thin sauce. And it really doesn't distract from or take away from the flavors if you add the herbes de Provence, because those spices are so strong and flavorful.
Yes, they're delicious. And as far as serving a group of people coming over, all of this can be made ahead of time. She talked about freezing meatballs. You can also make the sauce ahead of time and just heat it up. What do you serve with this menu? We talked about meatball, sauce, rice. What do you put with it typically?
Okay, so the three kind of vegetables that I typically serve with this, I don't use all of them. It's just kind of whatever I have on hand or whatever. Sometimes I'll ask company what their favorite vegetable is, but I like to bake my vegetables. The Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and asparagus are my kind of three go-tos. So it really depends on which vegetable you're using for the bake time and for the cook time. So I will just line a baking pan with foil and place the vegetable on, all over the pan, however much I want. Sprinkle it with oil or drizzle it with oil and sprinkle some coarse salt on it. Coarse salt to me is the key. Just
which
adds
is
extra
kosher
flavor.
Salt.
Yes,
I
believe it's coarse kosher salt.
Coarse kosher.
I'm not really sure. I'd have to pull it out in my pantry, but typically the temperature I use is anywhere from 350 to 425, and you'll bake it anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. I very much just change it up every time.
And roasted vegetables are magical. If you have children and they don't like to eat vegetables, just try roasting them. I think it was Ina Garten that taught me how to roast vegetables. And also, roasting maintains the nutrients. Sometimes if you boil them, they say the nutrients can disappear in the water that you pour off. Roasting them they're so flavorful, and you can roast pretty much any vegetable. Like she said, you just throw it in the oven on a baking pan. And she mentioned oil. Do you typically use olive oil?
I do. I like to use extra virgin olive oil. I haven't ever used it with cooking oil. I'm sure you could.
But olive oil is probably a little tastier.
Yes.
Okay, and then kosher salt or a coarse salt of some kind, and mix all that around. Throw it in the oven and roast it anywhere from 350 to 425, and you just check it for tenderness. I mean, you just taste it.
Some people like their Brussels sprouts a little softer. Some like them harder. Then the same goes with asparagus, but it's really up to your preference. It's so easy because there's no, solid rules on.
Right. I would say that probably if you're trying to hit an average and just figuring it out for the first time, you could try 400 for about 20 minutes and then go from there. Sometimes you can do a little hotter, a little longer, a little less, just depending on what you're cooking.
Especially with the Brussels sprouts, you'll need to cook longer than you would, say, asparagus, because it is a thicker vegetable.
Sure. Okay, that is a great tip. So what other tips do you have for us? Well, you've given us some time-saving tips with your recipe. Do you have another tip that would maybe especially with regarding to hostessing? How do you invite people into your home and not feel overwhelmed by it?
Okay. Before I answer the hostessing thing, I will have to say that my biggest tip for preparation, whether it's with this meal or anything, is use plastic cutting boards that are dishwasher safe. That is my favorite kitchen item that saves so much. I don't know. To me, I love being able to just throw it in the dishwasher.
Yes.
It saves so much time. And then especially if you're cooking with onions, they just soak, or chopping onions, like I said, I try not to do that, but that smell will soak into your wood, and
then you have to Google and figure out, there's all these tips about rubbing it with lemons or vinegar or salt or something to try. So if you use a plastic cutting board, you just chuck it in the dishwasher and you're done.
So for kitchen hacks, that is my biggest there. But back to hostessing, I think the most important thing is to create. It kind of doesn't even have to do about cooking, but just creating a carefree and relaxing environment. Which really starts, I think, with your marriage and the way you interact with your husband and your kids or anyone who's with you. Because when you walk into a house, if someone's invited you over and there's family tension, it automatically kind of gets your guard up and makes you feel uncomfortable. So I love to kind of be on the same page with my husband going into hosting, and kind of communicate with each other what our roles are going to be, so we can be working as a team, which is, if we are having over, especially if we are having over a couple that doesn't go to church, isn't really showing fruits of the Spirit and walking with Christ, then that's a really big witness. The first, that's kind of what hostessing, I think, is about, is being a witness to the people you have in your home. So I love doing that, and kind of having that as our main goal for the night. Other kind of, more practical ways, things that I think are important and ways to make people feel comfortable, is to have a tidy and clean home. Not necessarily, you don't have to deep clean. Right. Just having, you don't want to be stepping on crumbs or you don't want to have a visibly just dirty and cluttered place, but you don't have to vacuum, you don't have to mop or scrub the bathtub. They're not going to be taking a bath.
You don't have to spring clean before feeling like you can have company in your home.
Yeah.
And that's another way you can prepare ahead of time. I know when we've had big dinner parties, you think about it not the day before. It's kind of like studying for a test. If you have a big test coming up, if you cram the night before, you're going to feel stressed. But if you start studying 3 days before, or think about prepping 4 days before, then you are prepared. When the day finally comes, it's no big deal. You just kind of a quick review of your study notes. I feel like it's the same when you're cleaning. If a big dinner party's coming up, if you think about it the week before and slowly do a little bit each day, then when the time finally comes, when people are fixing to walk in your house, it's done. You might be throwing the last few dishes in the dishwasher, but even then you have to realize it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not putting on a show.
That is such a good parallel to the studying for a test and preparing. That's kind of my biggest thing I try to stay away from, is trying to show off or use this, the night or the the meal as a way of performing or a way to seek validation or approval from my guests, because, ultimately it's not about me. It's about fellowship and just communion with friends or people that you're getting to know. So I kind of think about that also when it comes to what I'm wearing for, the night. I think as women, we can kind of stress about it and be like, oh, I need to look so fancy and nice. And I want them to, think I'm just, this, we want to be the center of attention. And I just want to, my advice is to wear something comfortable. Yes, look nice, but don't put on heels or, don't feel like you have to wear something that's just for the sake of being nice if it's uncomfortable. You don't want to look homely either, or homeless. But
homely or homeless. both good advice. Yes. Not to look that way, but comfortable makes it easier to feel like, oh, I can do this again. If you're, like she said, not putting on a performance or a show, it's not all about you.
And I kind of, in preparing for this, I asked my husband just some tips on what he would think when he goes to someone's house, or whenever we're preparing for people, what he would think would be nice to have, or that he tries to be aware of and involved with. And I think the biggest thing, we were very on the same page about a lot of it. The one thing, though, that we did, I had in the category of nice but not important was dessert. He says this is necessary. You have to have dessert if you're having guests over.
My son. I would have to agree with them there.
Yes, and I do very much tend to be a dessert person, prepare for desserts, and I do actually. Once he did convince me. I do agree with him now. That is very necessary. You can always, have something store-bought. Homemade is really nice. But some things that we kind of talked about that are nice but not necessary are, having an appetizer, maybe some wine or alcohol, whatever is fitting for the meal, I think can be nice. And He's really big on having a house tour. He thinks if you have people over who haven't been to your house, it's just courteous to give them a tour. And I love that. And I think it's kind of inviting someone into your home and then letting them showing them your space so they can kind of feel more comfortable with you.
And that actually is a great idea, because I often think that when I'm in the middle of, trying to, I guess, throw the last minute thing together and somebody has to come up to me and ask, well, where's the bathroom? Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe I should have pointed that out before their child was desperately needing to go to the bathroom. So,
well, speaking of the bathroom, my on my list of things that are important is to always have extra toilet paper easily accessible to your guest. You want to have it, preferably, I know it's not cute, but have it visible, because you do not want to be at someone's house and be without toilet paper.
And I still have a traumatic childhood story where that happened to me as a young girl at a guest's home, where there was absolutely no toilet paper in the entire bathroom.
Oh dear. Yes, that is necessary. Other nice things I think really add to the night but aren't required. Fancy dishware, place settings, and flowers are really nice. I sometimes will get the $5 flower bouquet at Walmart and just have it as a centerpiece. And
yes, most grocery stores have a section for flowers, and oftentimes run sales. We had a store here. Walmart has that section. We had a store here in the South where I lived called Albertsons. I think it's Safeway up north. Mm-hmm. And they had a flower section, often had sales. So when their flyers came out, you could get roses and multiple things. I would watch and see what's on sale that week.
Yeah. And one thing about flowers, one thing I thought was so neat is when we had a guest over, a couple over, they actually brought us a vase with flowers as a hostess gift. And just really, it kind of made me inspired to do the same whenever we go over to other couples' houses for dinner. I just thought that was really nice.
We're living right outside of town. I don't know if you'd call it quite country, but I call it the country. And right near our house, wildflowers are growing. And the last couple of times I've gone to somebody's house, I've snuck around the corner and cut some wildflowers and put them in a little jar. And it's free, so easy, but they're so beautiful. And I think it's a great hostess gift.
That is really nice. I spoke about having candles. I know that, kind of brings a romance mood, but it is also nice. When you have company over, I just try to keep them out of the kitchen. I like to have one going in the bathroom. She agrees. She loves candles, love lights, but it can kind of taint with the taste of food if you have it in the kitchen. But I just think it makes the bathroom smell nice and there's something about it creating a warm, inviting environment. So that is really nice. And after the meal, it's always fun to have a game or two to play, and it can be something that everyone knows. It doesn't have to be long. You don't want to start a game of Monopoly, probably.
Right.
But, just a little card game or something just to, one of my family's favorites is catchphrase. Yeah, I think that's what it is. The one where you pass the thing around. Is that what it is, catchphrase?
There's taboo.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, but no, the little thing you pass around.
Yes, the little disc you pass around.
Catchphrase.
Yeah. Yes,
I haven't played
love
that in so
one,
long, but it's so much fun. When you plan a game like that, that really brings everybody together, but that's especially great, I think, whenever you're having people over you're not super comfortable with, you're not your best friends that you could just talk for hours and never run out of things to say. But you do something like that, and all of a sudden makes everybody relax.
And
laugh.
They're
having fun together. They're laughing. They're telling their stories, and it just breaks the ice. And so you end up with a great memory.
It is so nice.
Okay, so we've done your favorite tips. What is your must-have kitchen item, and where could we find it?
Okay, like I mentioned, the plastic cutting boards are, I would have to say, my most favorite item. I actually got them as a Christmas gift when I was 14. I was really into cooking, and my grandparents got it for me. I want to say it's Sam's Club, which is kind of like, I think up north they have Costco, which is a good alternative. I'm sure on Amazon you can find it, a variety. I don't really have a preference on the brand. I don't even know what brand mine are.
Right.
Just anything that is dishwasher safe.
Okay.
And
what size do you typically get or use the most?
Good grief. I'm so bad with sizes. I don't.
Maybe just kind of a medium type size.
Yes.
I mean, there's huge cutting boards.
Yes, I like the medium ones. Something that can fit in the dishwasher on the bottom shelf going up and down. And not
that would probably be a smaller medium, because the huge ones are nice if you were chopping a large amount of vegetables, but you would have to hand wash it. So just one that you could fit in the dishwasher. Okay.
I'm trying to think of anything else. Like I said, when it comes to spices, my favorite is the 21 season. Is it 21 season salute?
Mm-hmm. I think it's 21 seasoning salute, Trader Joe's. And if you don't have one in your area, they do have on their website, you can look up a map to see where stores are. And for years, the only way I ever visited Trader Joe's was I went to one when I traveled.
Yes.
If there was one in the town I was going to Trader Joe's. So I had a sister when I traveled to meet or to see her. I would go to her Trader Joe's, or I lived in the South for a long time, and anytime I took anybody to the Dallas airport, there was Trader Joe's all along the way. So that was our trip, going to the airport and Trader Joe's. So it's very fun. You could probably order online. There are third-party sellers, but they up the price so much. It's just not worth it, probably. So if you have a friend near a Trader Joe's, I've had a friend mail me stuff before back in the day. But typically Trader Joe's spices are $1.99. There's some that are $2.99, but they are so inexpensive, so affordable.
You can just use that one with anything. If you're like, I don't know what goes in here,
you can put it in
season salute.
Yep, you can put it in sauces, soups. We've used it for all kinds of things.
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of to wrap up, I know I talked a lot about hostessing and kind of my main I guess takeaways from my experience with going to people's house as a guest and then hosting is to really be a Mary and not a Martha. The story where, Martha's in the kitchen, just busy away and cannot enjoy the company. Of course, it's with Jesus, the best house guest, and Mary is over there engaging in conversation and being just, I think the prime example of a hostess is, being a friend. And that is why I think prepping ahead of time, this meal is so easy to prep ahead so you can be like Mary and really be engaged with your guest instead of just being stuck in the kitchen the whole time. Something Timothy, my husband, said is, as a host, it is our job to keep the conversation going when there's a lull, and you want to kind of be aware of that. You don't want to make people feel awkward when there's a lull in the conversation and there's nothing to talk about. Be interested and ask about them, and don't just talk about yourself the whole time. Like I said, it's not a performance, and something I think is really easy to do as women is to have these grandiose expectations of how the night will go, and it'll be so great, we'll all sit down and eat together, and the conversation will be so lively, they'll laugh at this joke I'll tell, but it's life. Some kid could one of their kids could get sick at the beginning and they'll have to leave. And a couple nights ago we had plans to have guests over, and the husband had a stomach bug, so we just had the wife and kid over and just ate pizza on the floor instead of at the table. And
that's very fun.
Yes, so I think it's good to have a vision for how the evenings go, but not set any expectations.
It's not set in stone. They're going to have a fabulous time even if they're eating pizza on the floor.
Yes.
That's a great tip. And I was thinking of when you were talking about just being present and being at the table. That is one thing I've struggled with, is not wanting to, or I do want to, clear the table and then throw things in the dishwasher and get things kind of cleaned up, and you end up not being a part of what's going on at the table and not being a part of the conversation. And so I really try to put that off until later. But another great tip I've had and had to be intentional about is, if you have kids old enough to help, or if their friends come over, you have a group full of, younger teenagers, older teenagers, and they can pitch in, they really rise to the occasion. They can, especially if you talk about it ahead of time. We once had a whole group of kids over, and ahead of time they were paired up, they were partners, and they got to draw out of a bowl what their job was going to be for the night. And so they and their friend or they and their cousin, either had the job of filling the water glasses or clearing the dishes when they were done, or loading the dishwasher and starting it. Or, whatever the job was that was needed, that mom could be up doing all by herself, for an hour while everyone else is having a great time. They all pitched in, had a great time, laughed together, but also learned how to be a servant to others. And it was just such a great experience. And more recently, we only have one teenager left at home, but we had dinner guests over, and he was in charge of cleaning the table while the adults were sitting around and talking. And he was talking too, but his job specifically was get up and clear all the dishes so that we can set dessert out. And you could just tell that he really enjoyed having a job, a time where he could serve and not just be sitting there with nothing to do. He was very, and such a big help to me. It was just, I think, a great learning experience to bring your kids and your, especially young teenagers along, so that they can learn those skills. Because one day they're going to have a home of their own, whether they're guy or girl. They're going to have people into their home, and they need to know how to do it, how it's done.
That is so true. And I remember when Tim and I were dating, and whenever I'd come over to y'all's house for, we'd have our families together for dinner, that was the way we bonded, was over cleaning up the dishes afterwards. We'd be in the kitchen together. He'd wash and I'd load the dishwasher, and it just kind of, we did the same thing in marriage. It kind of just prepared us to continue on.
Yeah. So, hey, any teenagers out there listening,
you could find your future spouse in the kitchen over the sink.
This is a hot tip. Do the dishes and have the cute girl or the cute guy come in there and help you.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your favorite menu and all of your tips. It is just such a pleasure to eat in your home and also to learn these things from you. It's just, something I appreciate so much, and I know our listeners will too. And speaking of this sweet little baby, I think thinks it's her turn. So we better sign off. Thank y'all for listening.
Thanks.